So one of my members, T, asked me if I could do a video on how to make a chessboard. And I said, yes, absolutely, because she's having a few problems with hers. And now they can create problems. And one of the biggest issues is if you get a poor quality mold, one of the really cheap molds. That's because they bow at the sides and they're not nicely spaced. Also, you don't get enough of the pawns, so you have to keep recasting them. You often only get 1 or 2 pawns, so you have to cast them several times. It's hard to match up the colours each time. I've ordered and just been delivered the Let's Resin chessboard, and to me it's the perfect one. All the pieces are designed really well, specifically for resin, so when you demold them, they demold really easily. They don't trap bubbles too much, and you can get some great results, and you get enough pawns as well for each set. It comes with 2 bags for holding your pieces in, plus it comes with some checker molds and some of the mica powders as well, which is always useful, and it's not that expensive. I will link it in the description below. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a full set of both what would be the black and the white, plus the board. And then if there are any problems with it, I'm hoping there are with the board. I hope I mess it up so I can show you how easy it is to repair that or put it right. Now, one of the important things is that when you're working on a chessboard is to make sure that you've got it on a completely flat and level surface before you start. Because if not, what'll happen is you will find that the resin will move around slightly and it'll overlap or it'll pool in little areas. So it's really important to make sure that you've got it in a flat surface to start with. I also like to work on a flat board as well, so that I can then move this about, or I can work on one of my leveling tables to ensure that it's completely level. So that's the first thing that you need to do. Now you can either colour your squares first with some mica powder or some chameleon powders or chameleon flakes, and that will work lovely, but it can be a little bit messy. So what I like to do is I like to fill mine in as I'm going, and I'll show you what I mean now. Well, I've got my nice bit of flat board here, and it's a nice and thick bit, so it's not going to warp at all. And what I'm going to do is cover it with my silicone mat, so it keeps nice and clean. And now when I've done the chessboard, I can move it to one side on another flat area or on my leveling board to cure. Now, my son has asked me if he can have this. So I said, yeah, of course you can. And he's asked me if I can do it in red and gold. I said, yeah, no problem. So I'm going to do it in red and gold. The other thing I'm going to do, and it really does help me from messing up, because if not, what I end up doing is I end up putting the same colour next to each other if I'm not careful. So all I'm going to do is every other square from underneath, I'm going to put a cross in it. Now this obviously won't show once you pour it because this is on the base, but I know this may sound silly, but believe me, when you do this, you will say to me, oh, that was so good. Thank you for that tip, after you've poured it into the wrong square. And I know, because I seem to do it every single time. So there we go, we've got all our squares marked. So when we turn it over, we've got a marker there for our eye to ensure that we actually put the resin in the right square. I want to start it with that way round. So my first square is where I put my resin. And I've got all my little pieces set up here as well, so that I can pour them really easy, and I'm going to show you how to pour them without getting any trap bubbles. So now I'm going to mix my resin up, and then I can show you how I'm going to put this resin in there. I'm going to go for a fairly thin resin rather than a thick resin, because I want to make sure that it will flow in all parts of these indented squares. So I'm going to start with the gold, but before I put the gold mica powder in it, what I'm going to do is put a bit of the ginger yellow opaque pigment in from the Let's Resin opaque pigment powders, and I find that it gives a much richer gold colour when you put a bit of yellow in there to start with to your mica powder. So give that a good mix in, and then you can pop your mica powder over the top, and make sure you stir your mica powder fully in as well, because you want to ensure that you've got no lumps in there to get a nice even distribution and colour. So look at that for a gold. It's a beautiful, beautiful gold. Now the other thing is I would suggest is you have a white at hand as well, ready if you do make a mess. and it is likely that I will. I mean, if you haven't got a trimmer, then the chances are you're not going to. And I'm going to be using pipettes in this because that will really allow me to control how much resin I get in. But remember, whenever you're using a pipette and you're doing it like this, wipe your tip first, because that way you're not going to spill it over everywhere. And then starting with my middle of it, I'm going to put some in. Fill it up and push it right the way to all the edges. Now I want these edges, these little indents that separate the squares, to be black, and I'm never going to mess about putting the black on that because, oh my goodness me, that would take you forever to do. So I'm going to show you, once it's all cured up, this board, how easy it is to fill that in with black in about 3 or 4 minutes and get a perfect finish to it. So that's that one done, and now I can just move on to the next one. And because I've got my little crosses in there, I'm not tempted to go into the next one along, which I can't tell you how many times I've done that. Anyone else done that? If you have, then own up to it. Own it and let me know in the comments if that's something you've done as well, or hopefully it's not just me. So I'll carry on, and what I'll do is I'll carry on and do all these because we've got this nice and level and on a nice flat board. It isn't going to run to one end or run over. And then when I fill them up, I'll tell you what I'm going to do next before I put the next colour square in, and that will make a real big difference to the neatness as well. So this is all now so nice and full. Now all I have to do is go across here with my long neck lighter, never a torch, and I'm paying particular interest in the edges of this because these are quite shallow squares. So if you've got any trap bubbles caught in the corners or the edges of this mold, then doing this will help release those. All I'm doing now is I'm just popping round, and any of these that I feel could have a little bit more in, then I'm popping a little bit more in so they're a little bit more domed. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Oh no, that one there needs just a little bit more. If I see any edges there where I feel there's a little bubble, I just get in there with one of these micro brushes and take that little bubble out. Right, I'm quite happy with that now, and I can just move this to one side of my mat here that I'm working on, and now I can start to fill up the chest pieces. So the easiest way to fill these up is by doing it in sections. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit into each one like that, and then do some squidgy widgy all the way around to ensure that I've got the actual resin everywhere I want it. So like this. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that for a few minutes while I do another one, and then I can come back to that one and top it right up. Give it quite a good squidgy widgy. You don't want to be being really gentle and that with it, and then give it a bit of a shake. And by not filling it right up, there's less resin in there, so it's easier for any bubbles to come up and come out, especially when you think about the knights. Now the knights obviously have the head, and they do have quite a lot of details in them. So all I'm doing is putting enough in there that I feel will fill the head up completely. Then I'm squidgy widging it all the way around, popping a little bit more in, and making sure I've got that resin everywhere. Now, this isn't going to guarantee 100% that you're not going to get any butt trap bubbles, but it really, really does help and make a massive difference. And again, I'll come back to that one in a second, and then I'll go through them all, and then I'll come back and I'll fill them up. So now we've got these half full, what we can do is go ahead and fill them up to 3/4 full, give them another little squidge like this around any bit, and then fill them up to the top. And that way you are less likely to get trap bubbles in these. Now I want to fill these right to the top, but I don't want to do an over pour on them. So what I am going to do is use a pipette just to finish off that final bit so I don't get an over pour. And then I'll leave these to cure. Any bubbles that come up to the top, I'll go over them with a long neck lighter like this to ensure I get rid of those. And that is your best chance of getting these lovely and bubble free without divots in them. Well, this is all cured now, ready for my red to go in. Now what I could do is pour a lot of red in and fill it right up, and it would fill those squares in, but also it would slightly change the color from behind of these squares, and I want to have a different base color and border on this. I'm going to be mixing up my resin in exactly the same way as I did for my yellow by adding red opaque colour, making sure that's all nicely mixed in there, and then adding my red mica powder. Again, making sure that's fully mixed in there without any lumps or bumps in it. And that has given a great red. And using exactly the same method as I did before, I'm still working on my wooden base. I can now fill these squares up. And if I get any onto this gold, it's not going to contaminate and ruin this whole chest piece, because I can just wipe it off. And also, I'm not going to make the mistake of trying to put it into the wrong square, because I've already got my squares all marked off. Pushing that to the edge, and then we can go from there. Both layers of this are dry now, and it's ready to have its final layer on of resin. So I'm just going to pop that out the way. Be careful, because you don't want to dislodge any of your resin squares, because if you do, you'll get resin under them when you pour the top layer on. So what I want to show you now is these ones are completely cured, and I want to show you how well not only this mold works, but how well using my method of filling them up will actually give you a great result. Just going to ease them out as gently as I can. Look at that. There's not one bubble anywhere on that, or any part of it missing or anything. And it is foolproof. Honestly, if you work the way I showed you, then you will get perfect castings of details like this. Because how often do you get like little bubbles there that spoil it? Let's try another one. Let's do the bishop. Yeah, and again, we've got a perfect casting. No bubbles anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to finish off demolding these and cast the red ones in exactly the same way. I'll be using exactly the same method. I'll let them cure. And now I'm going to show you how to do your last final pour on your chessboard. Well, I've got my white resin mixed up now, and I've done it in exactly the same way. I've added some mica powder and some of the Let's Resin white opaque pigment powder. Now, there will probably be some specks of the white mica powder that aren't mixed in, but I'm not too worried about that, because that will come up to the top. So now what I'm going to do is slowly put some in, or put some in, and then move it around slowly to ensure that I get a good result on all these edges as well as everywhere else. Pushing it into the corners and to these edge bits. And that way we can avoid getting any trap bubbles in there that are going to cause little gaps in this board. We might get one or two, but it doesn't matter, because I'm going to show you how we're going to neaten this up if it's not neat, and put the black dividing lines in once we've got that completely finished and cast. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that got me a coffee last month. I don't know what's going on with YouTube at the moment, because my views are really good, but the earnings are poor, so I'm struggling a little bit. So thank you very much. You allow me to keep buying these molds and doing all these things. And also, just a reminder to my members, we've got some new members only videos coming out very, very soon. One on YouTube and how to use YouTube as a crafter, and a couple on how to run small businesses and marketing and branding. So keep an eye out for those, members. And if you'd like to become a member, the link for that is in the description below. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. Now I'm going to pour some more in, and I'm still working on my board. And now I'm going to leave that about 10 minutes and then go over it with my long neck lighter. Okay, so that's about 10 minutes. What I'm going to do now is quickly go over it with my long neck lighter, and then I'm going to leave it to cure, and I'll show you what it comes out like and how I finish it off. I'm also going to get on and do the red chess pieces in exactly the same way. Well, everything's cast now, and I've demolded the red chess pieces. All we need now to do is demold this board. Oh, look at that. You see, doing it like I did, it comes out absolutely perfect. 99.9% of the time. Now, if you want black outlines around your chess pieces as opposed to the white, then I'm going to show you a really quick method of doing that. I mean, this board has come out well enough that I don't need to, but I actually do like it. And all I'm using is some black acrylic paint, and I'm going to put a bit there. I've got a soft brush, and now I'm going to go around paint in my black lines. Look how neat and tidy I'm being with this. go all the way around, painting your black in, making sure you're getting everywhere. See, I'm just brushing this in. I don't need to go over all the square, just enough to make sure I've got all the white covered. And you might be thinking, oh, this is so messy, but honestly, it will come off so easily in a minute and leave this looking amazing. So my advice is, once you've done that, is to turn it around and look at it again from a different angle, because then you'll pick up any of the white bits that you missed, and I missed quite a few. And then turn it around again and look at it again, and then turn it around again. We'll let that dry for about 5 minutes before we do anything else to it. So now that's been drying for a while, all I'm doing is taking some baby wipes and laying them over the top like this. And if you haven't got baby wipes, you can do this with a bit of kitchen towel that you've made wet. Don't have it too wet, you don't want it saturated. Okay, I'm going to leave that on there for about 3 or 4 minutes, just pushing it down, but not too hard, just pushing it down to make real good contact with that paint that's on there. Okay, and once it's been on there a few minutes, all you need to do is go across these really quite lightly and clean that off. And then I like to go over with a paper towel afterwards to make sure that's fully clean. And what it'll do is it'll leave the black in the indent, but it'll remove all the black off the surface. And it is better, it makes it so much easier to remove if you do just leave them on there for a few minutes, for about 3 or 4 minutes prior to trying to wash them off. And there we have a brilliant chessboard with now a black outline on all the squares and the edge. I really like the white background on this. And there we go, it's all finished. And I think that has come out absolutely lovely. Every single piece is perfect. There's not one bit missing from it. You could put some felt on the bottom of these if you wanted to. I think that would finish it off really nicely. But look, every single detail has come out, and that's the great testament to a really good mold, a good quality mold, and also to make sure that you do all that squidgy widgy in when you're putting them in as well. Brilliant mold, and it does all the pawns in one hit rather than having to keep mixing them up, doing them, mixing them up, doing them. I'll link everything that I've used in the description below. T, I hope this has been really useful for you on how to get a great chessboard completely finished. Check out the video I've got coming up next. I think you'll really love that one. It's an experiment I did, and if you're interested in resin, I think you'll find this really interesting. Boo that like button, hit that subscribe button, and most of all, enjoy your resin. Take care. Bye.